Hi there, hello, welcome to my first ever video, and today I'll be making Hollow Knight Silksong, a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania, and the sequel to the amazingly successful Hollow Knight. Silksong was initially announced way back in February 2019, and since then there have been very few updates on its progress, and still no confirmed release date. So I decided to make it myself, but in 2 weeks, for some reason. Anyways, I started by booting up Unity and creating some basic shapes. I then added some basic movement. Now, I know that it currently doesn't look very pretty, but when prototyping game, it's best to prioritize mechanics over aesthetics in the beginning, because it's more important that your game works and it's fun to play. So I spent an hour perfecting my player model. In the original game, I believe that all the character models were animated via sprite sheet animations, where each frame was a separate drawing. But that takes too long, and I already wasted, extensively dedicated my time on perfecting a different part of the project. So instead of using frame by frame animation, I use skeletal animation, which is a more efficient and flexible means to animate, as it only requires a single drawing that is composed of multiple layers, in which the image is manipulated and contorted with bones, similar to how most 3D animation works. So you can do stuff like this. Whee! After creating some perfectly accurate animations, I called it a night for day 1. Day 2. I added some more advanced movements such as wall sliding and wall jumping. I also gave Hornet a sprint, which activates when the player presses and holds the dash button whilst on the ground. Otherwise, if done in the air, Hornet will perform a short air dash. I then use Unity's particle system to make the dashes more exciting. Also, if you press jump whilst dashing, you go torpedoing in the air. Day 3. Now, one of the main differences between Silksong and its predecessor Hollow Knight is that Hornet can ledge grab. The way I understand how ledge grabbing works in video game is that basically, there are 2 short-range invisible lasers coming out of the player, typically one above and below the character's shoulder. If the lower laser detects ground whilst the upper one doesn't, it triggers the ledge grab. This is actually the second Metroidvania game that I've ever made, and my first game already has ledge grabbing. So this should be easy to implement.
Why? Why? Just why? 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 What? Huh? Nope, I'm done, that's all I'm doing today. Nope, that's all, nope. I'm done with this. Nope. Not doing this anymore.
Anyways, after an excruciating amount of time later, everything is finally working as intended. Day 4 to 5. Next up was giving Hornet some basic attacks, which I implemented through keyframes of Hornet's attack animation, which changes depending on the direction of the player's movement. If pointed down, Hornet will perform a downward diagonal strike. Actually, give me a moment. If pointed down, Hornet will perform an infamous attack. I then got started working on designing a simple UI for the player's health and special meter. I designed it so that every time you lose a health, the screen will shake and Hornet will flicker in and out of existence. You know, as you do to indicate temporary invulnerability to bodily harm. In Silksong, Hornet has a special meter, or silk meter, which fills up 1 notch each time she attacks an enemy. Once she has enough silk, Hornet can perform special attacks or abilities, one of which allows her to quickly heal 3 health by consuming 9 silk notches. Next, I gave Hornet some special attacks, the infamous Gossamer Storm attack, an AoE attack that continuously strikes nearby foes, which was also in the original Hollow Knight game, and this new Stabby Strike attack, a quick and powerful attack. Essentially, these attacks and Hornet's heal ability both consume resources from the same meter. In other words, the player must choose to either play it safe and reserve their silk for healing, or spend it on dealing higher DPS. Day 6 to 9. I decided that this project would take place at the Citadel, because I think the design of this area just looks really cool. I modeled an enemy based off these 3 goons. However, there has not been any official names for them, so I decided to name them Kevin, Stuart, and Bob, since they remind me of the minions from Despicable Me. There has been very few footages of the areas and the enemies, so I had to fill in the blank for both the enemy's behavior and the map design. I started by creating an abstract class to encapsulate the mutual variables and methods all the enemies will share. That way I can avoid repeatedly typing the same code, and thus save time. I designed all the enemies to have 2 main states, an idle state and an attacking state, such that when the player enters the enemy's line of sight, that enemy will enter their attacking state. After putting a bit too much time in the detail of Stuart, I programmed him to simply patrol a small area and chase Hornet only if she's in sight. Also, I made it so that while Stuart is chasing Hornet, he has a random chance to jump at the player.
Bruh.
I designed Kevin similar to Stuart, which was easy to do because of the abstract classes. But instead of jumping, Kevin will strike with his weapon twice, which can potentially deal 2 damage if not careful. Whereas for Bob, I honestly have no clue what he can do. Truthfully, I can't see him as very hostile or dangerous. He's just a baby. So I decided to give him the harmless ability to stop time. But in all seriousness, instead of directly attacking the player, I made it so that Bob has the ability to summon more enemies. Either this flying lad, Otto, who flies around and occasionally throw a bell at the player. Or this flying Chad, Agilito, who is essentially a combination of Otto's movement and Kevin's attack. Day 10. After spending a bit too much time playtesting the game, I felt that something was missing. So I decided to add Parry, another mechanic that appears in the Hollow Knight series. I'm not exactly too sure how Team Terry designed it, but when Hornets and enemies / overlap, before hurting Hornet, I made it so that the enemy / hitbox would be disabled, but the visuals are still there.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
Day 12. I designed my own original boss, because I wanted to. Most of my boss's attack and design took inspiration from the character Death, from Puss in Boots 2 The Last Wish, where my boss, Demise, will randomly perform 1 of 4 attacks: a triple strike, a jumping lunge attack, this fiery attack, don't ask how this is possible, and this Captain America throwing attack, which the player can deflect, and somehow the sickle will always return back to the boss. Please don't question the physics. Now that I've created all the enemies, I began working on the art of the area to make it look more like the Citadel. Shouldn't be too difficult. Good enough. After drawing all the area assets, I used a tile map to simply paint on top of the existing colliders. I then added some post-processing to make everything look better and more like the actual game. I added vignette, which darkens the edges of the camera, as well as depth of field and grain to blur the background, to really draw focus to the player. And that's all, folks. It's been 2 weeks and it's time to wrap things up. And there's definitely no more time to do anything else. However, after playtesting some more, I felt like something was missing from my boss. It didn't feel like a Hollow Knight boss. So after rewatching more Silksong footage, I realized what I didn't need to, but really wanted to add. So I decided to go overtime with my project. I added phases to my boss, as well as a staggered state, where if the player rushes the boss enough, the boss will be temporarily stunned, rewarding the player with a brief, uninterrupted time to do extra damage, or heal. I also gave my boss 2 new attacks, a parry move, so that when Hornet strikes him in his guard state, my boss will block the incoming attack and unleash a flurry attack that takes 2 HP, similar to this fight. I also added this ultimate attack, where my boss will charge up and then zip back and forth, potentially dealing 3 damage to the player. And now we have a fairly believable Silksong boss. And there we have it. Hollow Knight Silksong made in 2 weeks. Honestly, there was a lot more I would have wanted to add. I originally planned to also work on Hornet's tools and crests, which allows the player to have various playstyles, but I somehow ran out of time. I just don't know what happened. I had a schedule and everything, I finished all the coding parts on time, and there was definitely nothing else that I wasted my time on. Oh well. Anyways, I made this video because I was tired of waiting for Silksong, and this kinda rehyped me for the game's hopeful release. Honestly, I don't mind too much about waiting for the game. I just want more updates from Team Terry. Even them just saying they're still working on the game as they want to give us the best possible player experience or something like that. So unfortunately, I won't be releasing this game due to legal reasons. Anyways, feel free to tell me in the comments below what you think about my Scrub Silksong game, or my first video. Or if you have any suggestions on what kind of game you'd like to see me make next, let me know. So I'll stop my commentary for now and let you enjoy the rest of the gameplay. And there you have it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, how do I end this? Have a good day.